Before you start writing any code for the web, the first thing you need to understand is directory structure. What you create on your computer has to go on a website at some point, which means it goes up to a web server. Now, you can't take with you the entire contents of your hard drive. So for example, if I was to start building a website here in this folder called websites, and I started to link to a picture that was in my pictures folder, I would need to take up all of the directory structure of my computer for it to link across to that. So instead, what we do is for each web project, we usually create a new folder for that. I'm going to call this my _ first website. And you'll notice that there are no spaces. I use the underscore instead. We don't ever create file names with spaces for the web. And this comes down to the way that they look when they're displayed in a web browser. So we generally avoid all kinds of extraneous characters such as exclamation marks or anything like that in our names. We usually just keep it as simple as possible. In fact, I would even recommend when you're starting off, just use lowercase letters and the underscore, or you could also use the dash as well inside things. So let's call this my first website. And inside this first website, there's a few folders that we should try and create. We work with something called CSS, which is Cascading Style Sheets, and that's basically where all of our design code lives. So if we created another folder here, we would call that CSS. Later on, when you get really good at creating websites and you start to use something called JavaScript, you might have a folder for your JavaScript as well. And most people just call that JS. You may also start working with images. So we'll create a folder called IMG. Later on, again, you may start working with fonts that you may be using. So you may need a fonts folder. You may need a fonts folder. Possibly you might start working with video, in which case you might need some things for that, or sound in that, so you may want to have a media folder instead. We're not going to use media right now, we're not going to use JavaScript, and we're not going to use fonts. But that's the basic things that we probably need, is a folder to put our CSS in and a folder to put images in. Start off with, we're probably not even going to put those in, but it's just a good habit to get into. So if we go back one, we can see there's my first website with these two empty folders in there. I've just dropped a web page in here just to show you that we also put all our web pages in here. Now, when you get a really big site, you may even want to start putting some of these web pages into separate folders as well. But for most small sites, you can probably get away with just putting the index page in here and all the other pages. So if I was to duplicate this, we might end up with a whole bunch of other pages like this, and it might sort of look like this by the time we end up with a simple 3-page website. So that's how you organize all of your files ready for the web. We put all of them into one folder, and it's very easy for us to upload all of those onto a web server.